Eric.
Yep.
What's going on? We got a show to do. You're super distracted. What's up?
Sorry, just ADHD and this super cool new app called Peel.
That's the app that allows you to get bananas delivered door to door and nothing else?
No, but that's a good idea for an app too. No, Peel, it's a social game where you and your group chat get to play by answering prompts together and seeing each other's responses.
Oh, so it's like apples to apples, but for the sickos.
It's like apples to apples if apples to apples created packs that were exclusively for, say, women's soccer fans like you and me.
Ooh, I like that. So what's today's prompt?
Today's prompt is, which player would you most like to hear mic'd up?
Trinity Rodman, obviously. Best trash talker in the game.
Yeah, I mean, except Emily Sonnet exists.
It's a really, really good point. But that's the beauty of playing Peel. Everybody's got a different answer, and it's the best way to argue with each other. So to everyone listening, download Peel and try it out today. We put an exclusive link in our show notes where you can unlock all of Peel's women's soccer prompts. Invite your friends. Try Peel today. Now, can we please start the show?
Fine. Hello, and welcome to Expected Own Goals. The stove is hot, hot, hot edition. I am your host, Eric Morgan.
I'm Evan Davis. Do you think Jill Ellis is the peak dad NWSL executive?
Ooh, that's a great question. She brings a lot of the problematic aspects of dad to the table, and now she's gone to work for Daddy FIFA.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Feels right to me.
Jill Ellis doesn't listen to anyone is peak dad energy. Jill Ellis says fuck your feelings is peak dad energy.
That's very dad.
Where dad is a person you have to go to therapy to talk about. We've got a lot to cover today. Everybody locked in their rosters.
Everybody locked in their rosters. Everybody had to get their roster size down to 26 or less, make decisions on options. But that's the end point here. We've got a bunch of stuff that ended up leading up to that. Namely, I think there are 3 pretty high-profile signings and trades that have occurred in the last week, as well as some major front office moves, one of which is very funny, and a head coach got fired. So where do you want to start?
I want to start with the front office, because I think that opens our conversation out to players.
Sure.
First off, we have Jill Ellis leaving for FIFA, and then we have Jonas Eidevall, head coach, coming in rumors.
Rumors, yes. Wouldn't shock me if Lauren Leichman would think to herself, could splash some cash on a high-profile head coach here, and I'm sure Eidevall would not say no to a change of scenery like that. So it wouldn't surprise me if this deal got done.
Becky Tweed has been fired. Her second verse, same as the first, to Freya Coombe. We've talked a lot about the slow decline of the Becky Tweed era. This is an inevitability. There is the potential for Casey Stoney to step in and become manager of Angel City.
It just feels like if she's in Southern California, she wants to stay in Southern California. Willow Bay could do worse than hiring Casey Stoney. Right now, Ellery Earnshaw, who has been a coach at Angel City under both Coombe and Tweed, she will serve as the interim head coach. Played some college soccer under Emma Hayes 20 years ago at Iona College, which is kind of interesting. And she's Welsh, so she automatically has my support. That's the game plan for now until something changes.
Which now do you think is likelier? Eidevall is the coach of San Diego, or Casey Stoney is the coach of Angel City?
They're both kind of likely now because they need a coach who knows how to coach defense.
I think it's funny because the personnel that Angel City have right now on their roster is not built well for Casey Stoney to immediately come in and have the pieces she needs.
I mean, maybe, but think about it. Madison Hammond and Rocky Rodriguez, if you put them in as a deep-lying double pivot and don't give them a lot of progression responsibilities and don't tell them to try and join the attack in any kind of aggressive way, a lot of their weaknesses get hidden.
I love that you've immediately disregarded Katie Zellum in that statement.
Well, throw Zellum in there too. I mean, all 3 of them.
You're right. If you throw all 3 of them on the field at the same time, you could potentially have a Casey Stoney turgid midfield where most of your progression is coming from Vignola and Giselle Thompson.
You just kind of need to get another center back and you need to get a goalkeeper.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I think that Megan Reed is not the answer and hasn't been the answer for a very long time. And with the possibility of Vanessa Gilles coming back, you actually might have the pieces in place for Casey Stoney to be quite successful there.
And then it's just a matter of getting a goalkeeper. Your wingers are equipped to play direct and over the top if you let them. I think it actually could be a nice fit.
Actually, now that I'm thinking about it more, I suppose having all of the attacking, relying upon Vignola, Giselle Thompson, Alyssa Thompson, Claire Emsley, June Endo, who will be back, and you still have Kennedy Fuller, who feels like a Swiss Army knife of a player in growth, with target strikers in Sid LaRue and Messiah Bright, and who knows, whatever you get out of Casey Fair. I don't hate that. I can talk myself into that actually working.
Well, and especially if what we're talking about here is like 8th place and you squeak into the playoffs, you know?
Yeah, very much so. Casey Stoney had a huge boon in Kaylin Sheridan. Didi is not going to be back next year for Angel City, so there are big question marks at goalkeeper. Those feel solvable. My optimism about Angel City probably will be determined by whether they are able to hire Casey Stoney, and then, of course, whether or not you sign Kristen Press again.
And then further up the chain, maybe even more significantly, Angela Hucles Mangano mutually parted ways with Angel City, which we felt was inevitable. But it turns out it was because she already had another job waiting in the wings, a job that feels really ideally suited to her reputation, which is she's going to work for the Houston Dash.
I like to think of this as, you know, when you were toxic in a relationship, but you also have a toxic ex, and then you're free, and instead of doing like the right things and restoring your reputation, you just hop in with a yet more toxic new partner. I feel like that's a lot about what's happened with Hucles Mangano to Houston. I love in the press release they put out, she has 40-something years of experience. So they're giving her credit for like youth soccer in there that she played. She's 46. That boggled the mind.
They also had to make up a title for her because she can't technically engage in any soccer operations for the team until January 1st due to her suspension. So she's not technically the GM yet. She's like head of women's soccer events or something. And it's gobbledygook.
We're never here rooting for the downfall of a person's career. But Hucles Mangano is responsible or partially responsible for the only time in NWSL history a team's ever been deducted points.
That's right.
Feels like a pretty red X on one's reputation. It's hard for me to look at a member of Angel City's front office moving to another team and think, that's good for that other team.
But this is also like why Houston was the job that was available to her.
Totally. It's true. It's a combination of those two things. Let's move on. Ryan Dell, who left Louisville, has found a new landing spot in Kansas City. Evan, what do you think about this?
He supersedes the GM. He is officially chief of soccer operations, so he will be overseeing the GM, Caitlin Carducci, and working hand in hand with Vlatko Andonovski, who is also the sporting director, as well as the head coach. All three of these people worked together at U.S. Soccer at one time, and it feels like the Longs have asked Vlatko Andonovski, who do you like to have around you? And he has said, Caitlin Carducci and Ryan Dell are pretty nice to work with, and therefore, here we are. Dell has pedigree. He certainly made a name for himself in his 2 years at Louisville. He had a vision and a strategy to try and overcome whatever budgetary restrictions were imposed on him, and therefore probably will be very useful in working with Carducci and Andonovski to bolster that squad. Kansas City, after today, is actually on the lighter side in terms of players. They only have 17 currently on the active roster, plus 2 on the SEI list. That's second least of everybody in the league. So there's actually like quite a bit of work to do for Kansas City to build their roster out over the next 3 months. It feels like a pretty solid brain trust. And it's, again, because of their working relationship at U.S. Soccer, it's a brain trust that seems to trust each other, frankly, and will work well together. So if the most important thing about a front office is that you get the entire organization rowing in the same direction, this feels like another step toward doing that for Kansas City.
Kansas City has now a totally full blossoming front office and no goalkeepers. Were you surprised to see that as their roster was announced?
I mean, Alma Schultz and Adriana Franch were both free agents, and I did not expect Franch to get re-signed. And Schultz, we kind of don't know what Schultz wants to do. You know, there was talk that she was thinking about retiring before Kansas City came calling. So she had this incredible half season on a run to an NWSL semifinal. Does that mean she wants another go of it? Does she want to go back to Europe? Does she want to try to play somewhere else? Or does she just want to hang them up? We don't know the answer to that. It is an interesting problem, quote unquote, for Kansas City to solve. But I wouldn't say that I'm surprised that neither Schultz nor Franch inked new deals with them. And who knows, maybe Schultz will re-sign with them anyway. It just might take a minute.
Entirely possible. All right, you want to move on to our big player signings that have happened so far?
Let's get into the meat of it. We talked about Delaney Sheehan and Madison Curry last week, the first two dominoes to fall in the offseason. But we've had three interesting signings and trades over the last couple of days. Let's just go in chronological order. Let's start with Maitane Lopez moving from Gotham to Chicago. 2-year deal. She'll be 30 next year. As we all know, she can play number 6, as she did with Atletico Madrid and at times with Gotham this year. She can play center back, at which she excelled in a short sample when she came over in 2023. A player who clearly still has a lot to give, but is also about to tip over to the other side of the age curve. Had a lot of injury problems in 2024, nagging stuff that she just couldn't get over. I think this is an improvement for Chicago based on what their central midfield looks like right now. Julia Bianchi's not going to be re-signed, but between Leilani Nesbitt, B. Franklin, and Carrie Recaro, Maitane can easily supplant one of those three players for one of the central midfield slots in that squad. And she can also be used to fill in at center back while you wait for Sam Staub to come back. And that may be even the more crucial part, at least in the first half of the year.
That's what I actually think is most important here, is I think that Maitane is a inch-perfect pass of a signing as far as can give you good Sam Staub impression at center back. She's great at progressive passing for a center back. It's just a thing she does well. That is something that Chicago really struggled with once Staub was out of the lineup. So if you can give the impression of Sam Staub, if you can give 60%, 70% of Sam Staub while allowing the team to play tactically in the same system and then slot in at central midfield when Staub is ready, I think she's like a maximum value player should she remain healthy for next year. And because this is only a 2-year deal, I really love this for Chicago, even if it was a little expensive. She was an important part of the 2023 team that won the league for Gotham. She was a less important part of the Galacticos Gotham, and I think maybe unfairly a less important part, even though injury was a big part of it.
I think injury was most of it. At least that's the chatter that we had heard. She kind of lived in this weird liminal space of being not so injured that they ever wanted to put her on an injury report, at least not very often, but also not healthy enough where they felt comfortable playing her a lot. So she ended up with a lot of games on the bench, but it sounds like it had nothing to do with talent and everything to do with, are you 100% fit? Maybe she wasn't. With a clean bill of health, hopefully she can actually get some real playing time under her and would be productive. And again, with that versatility to push up into the midfield or drop back in central defense means that one of Chicago's most glaring weaknesses, or two of them actually, as you mentioned, ball progression from deeper areas and really tenacious on-ball defensive quality will now be on offer. It's a good signing.
It's not a 3-year, it's not a 4-year deal, it's a 2-year deal. If you're going to be offering players who are turning 30 in the next calendar year deals, offer them on the shorter side. All right, let's move on to the Gotham Exodus Part 2. Sam Hyatt moving into almost certainly a starting center back job in Portland. Because there aren't other center backs in Portland, really, who are better than her. Evan, how are you feeling about this as a move?
I think this is good. It's 2 years plus a mutual option. She'll be 27 next year. It's a long-ish deal, or has the potential to be a longer deal, but it will all be in Hyatt's prime years, or at least before she turns 30. We'll see how she looks after the foot injury that kept her out for a good chunk of the back end of last year. She will start because Kelly Hubley and Becky Sauerbrunn did not re-sign with Portland. Doesn't mean they won't, but right now in this very movement, basically only Isabella Obeys and Sam Hyatt are your starter caliber center backs at the moment. We loved her last year moving to Gotham because she was like the best backup center back that you could get. There's a part of me that thinks that Sauerbrunn is just coming back on a 1-year deal. But does that mean to start? Does that mean to come off the bench?
My feeling is, taking a look at the numbers she put out over the last 2 seasons, first at OL Reign and then at Gotham, is that she's dynamic enough to play in different systems. She upped her progressive pass percentage by a significant margin last year in Gotham, and that was just purely tactically being asked to do a different thing at the cost of her passing completion percentage. So Laura Harvey was asking her to play shorter passes. She was not particularly great at that. When asked to play more progressive passes, her passing numbers went down yet again. But for the sake of playing faster transitionally, I think that she's built well to pair with Sam Coffey and also with the kind of wing outlets Portland have. I like her in this Portland team. I think that she is a good front foot defender and essentially takes a lot of the aerial marking assignments that Kelly Hubley would have had on set pieces. I think there's a lot of fill here. Granted, you look at that Portland backline, Portland, by its own account, listed Mally McKenzie as a defender, despite announcing her as a midfielder when they re-signed her. So the only 6 defenders Portland have on their roster are Hyatt, McKenzie, Mueller, Payne, Obeys, and Reina Reyes.
A lot of fullbacks in that list.
Yeah, a lot of fullbacks, 1 midfielder, and 2 center backs. So Sam Hyatt will get a lot of rope, I feel like, to sort out herself and dangle herself. I love that this contract basically runs until she's 30, if the option is seen through. Again, I think Portland got the years right on this. How do you feel about what's happening as an exodus in Gotham? What does that read to you as?
I don't know.
Is it an exodus?
It's hard for me to say. We have discussed the rumors that there may be some locker room discontent with Juan Carlos Amaros. We don't know what that means, if it even is a real thing. Is that coming from a single player who's disgruntled for whatever reason? Or is it a cadre of players? Or is it the entire team? We have no answers for that. I think Gotham needed to get cheaper. If I were to play Occam's razor here, at least based on the information that we do have, we know that it was an expensive squad, and so they probably needed to shed some weight. Lo and behold, they have the smallest roster right now going into the next phase of the offseason, 17 active players plus 1 on the SCI list. That means they have a little bit more room to breathe. Hyatt was only going to get more expensive, and she was going to be in demand as a free agent. I think that Gotham is going to try and figure out how to build this squad out a little bit more leanly than they did last offseason. That's my hunch as why there have been multiple players who they haven't re-signed, and there may yet be more as things progress over the next 3 months.
Yeah, my feeling with these kinds of moves is typically the curse of being a good team is that as you get more expensive in a cap situation, you are just going to lose component pieces of what defines aspects of your quality. In this case, it's depth. This is all pretty inevitable. If I'm trying to look for solid signs from Gotham, you haven't lost a starter yet. You haven't lost...
Well, Sheehan ended up being a clear starter.
That's true. I wouldn't describe Delaney Sheehan as a core piece of that 11.
Well, I think a lot of people in Gotham would dispute that too. I think maybe you and I are on the same page about that, but I think a lot of people in the team see her differently, including Yael Everbush-West and Juan Carlos Amaros. I think the real test here is what they do about Midge Purse. Are they pushing their chips toward re-signing Midge Purse, or do they have another plan in place to move on from her and just make Yasmin Ryan the permanent starting right winger?
You want to move on and talk Kristen Westphal?
Kristen Westphal traded to the Dash this morning. The Dash were probably the most active team today in terms of moves that we didn't know were coming. Like we said earlier, they re-signed Jalissa Harris, Amanda West, and Alicia Chapman all to the same contract. They all got 2 years plus a mutual option. And then they sent $14,000 in allocation money plus an international roster spot to the San Diego Wave to get Westphal. I think this is value for money. Does Westphal project to be an elite fullback again? Maybe not. She's going to be 31 next year. She's had a great career. Her defensive work left something to be desired when she did play in limited minutes last season, but it's a good piece of depth to have. But also, like, what does that mean in the context of the chaos that is the Houston Dash? When their GM isn't going to be installed for another 3 weeks, they still don't have a head coach, and all the attendant mysteries that result from that remain.
If I'm Houston, I look at Westphal's profile and I say to myself, I only really see this player succeeding as a wingback with a back three because she offers so little defensively. She is pretty below average player when it comes to what she can contribute on a defensive end. She's an attacking fullback, so saith her statistical profile. I'd love to see how she's deployed. I think the price is probably right here. And with 1 year left, what's the risk?
I don't think they know what they have at fullback / wingback. Like Avery Patterson was used as a wingback a lot last year. You have Ryan Garris. You have Alicia Chapman, who is, I think, going to be 36. None of those pieces jump out to me as a guaranteed in-ink starter and that includes Westfall. We don't know what the vision or the direction is going to be for Houston, so they're just probably after known quantities that don't cost a lot of money, and Westfall fits that bill.
Low risk, potentially medium reward, I think is kind of like the best case scenario with Kristen Westphal. I suspect next season we won't be talking about how Kristen Westphal has revolutionized the transition game in Houston.
And at her age, how much can she continue to be a quality attacking piece from that spot on the field? I don't know.
Any December 10th roster moves that you think are interesting or surprising?
Every team used different language when describing the players they had in 2024 who were free agents and then didn't re-sign. You know, some of them framed it as though the team made the choice not to renew the contract.
Angel City, yeah.
Others said that these players were out of contract and therefore free agents, but we don't know if that means they're in active negotiations. Other teams identified specific players as to who was in negotiations to potentially re-sign. Caroline, Marta, Kristen Press, a few others. So it's all very vague. I think the takeaway more broadly is just who is really stacked right now and who has space to fill. I mean, we already mentioned the Current and Gotham. Angel City as well only have 19 players under contract, 17 active plus 2 on the SEI list. And then on the other side, North Carolina has 24 active and only 1 on the SEI. Bay FC, 23 plus 2. Orlando, 21 plus 4. What this means for each team is different. Orlando just has a good squad, and they locked up a lot of their players before this window. So Bay FC, do they have a lot of dead weight that they need to try and move on, and can they? I don't know what any of it means. So much is going to happen still. Players are going to get traded. This is just sort of the beginning of things rather than a grand declaration of any team's plans. Maybe the most fascinating thing is that there are 5 teams without a full-time GM right now, 2 of whom we don't even know if they have an interim in place. Louisville and Portland. Bay, Houston, and Angel City all have interims. Houston will have a permanent one come January 1. That's not great. I mean, guys, the season starts in 3.5 months. We are getting to the thin end of the wedge already, and there's just no time to put any long-term strategy in place. Bay FC, like, if you're going to hire Matt Potter permanently, like, do it. Angel City, your hand was kind of forced because your GM broke the rules, kind of threw everything into chaos. Houston, you're a mess. It's to be expected. Louisville, I don't know why now did this opportunity only come to Ryan Dell recently. Okay, well then I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you then have to scramble. But also based on some of the things Becky Morgan has said, I don't have a lot of trust in like who you're going to bring in. And Portland has had plenty of time to figure this out. More than 2 months, in fact. It's no accident that they were the last team to announce their roster status. More than an hour, in fact, 90 minutes after the deadline had passed is when they finally announced.
With Izzy D'Aquila being the odd one out, that being the last announcement that they were releasing her.
What jumped out to you about today?
We saw the 2 approaches. For the teams that have analytics departments in their front office, Bay and Orlando are right at the tippy top of players currently rostered, both with 25 out of a possible 26 spots, whereas 3 of the other teams are right at the low end. Washington, Kansas City, and Gotham all have a ton of open space on their rosters. There isn't one set approach to this new era of free agency. There isn't a singular style of thought, which I think is to be expected, but also kind of jumps out.
I guess maybe my one thought about Bay is that how are you going to convince players to come to an expansion franchise about which nobody knows anything? We have to offer long-term deals. You have to offer more guarantees. And so I wonder if that's why they only have 5 players who have a year left. They had to use that as an enticement. Somebody said they just couldn't believe that the Mets gave Juan Soto 15 years. I'm like, for one thing, this is one of the 2 best hitters of the last 20 years. So there's that. But also, how else are you supposed to entice somebody over when the money is more or less equal with a couple of other teams that put in bids? Players want security.
You give Rachel Kundananji a luxury box like Juan Soto got.
For example. Yeah, I think that's a big driver, at least for Bay, and that's just but one example. Meanwhile, North Carolina has a loaded roster, but 12 players are done in a year with their contracts. They're just at this weird pinch point where they have a lot of guarantees sewn up, but that won't last forever. So yeah, there's no real rhyme or reason to it, but it is interesting.
I suppose I'm a little surprised that Utah and Hannah Betfort didn't find resolution. And they might.
If her agent is anything like Scott Boras, you drag out every last possible advantage you can until you get the best deal you can.
That's fair.
We don't know if that's actually what's going on, but if that is what's going on, I feel like that's smart business because Betford and her agent know that there aren't a lot of other guaranteed young attacking options available to them to play centrally at Utah. So they have a little bit of leverage there.
Yeah. Anything else that seems fresh to you or worth mentioning? I feel like this year's a little strange. Let's talk about the Caroline situation and how it's shaping up.
North Carolina very explicitly said in their roster update that they were in active negotiations with Caroline. That doesn't mean that she is not in active negotiations with other teams. She may very well be, but teams tend not to report that stuff themselves unless they feel pretty confident that they can get a deal done. Same thing with Marta. Marta is in the same process with Orlando, Kristen Press with Angel City. You feel like North Carolina is going to get the deal done, but we just won't know 100% yet.
I thought Abby Erceg not re-signing with Louisville was interesting.
Yeah, that's a good shout.
You think retirement? You think moving?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. Like at her age, you could see her retiring. She experienced a decline last year in performance, which we've talked about on the show before. Ellie Pikiyamasa exercised her side of her mutual option. She's coming back, and maybe Erceg thought between her and Aaron Wright, maybe there wasn't a starting spot available for her anymore. But if Abby Erceg feels like she can't be a starting center back for Racing Louisville, who does she feel like she can be a starting center back for?
That's fair.
That's maybe my one worry there. But also maybe she's retiring, which she's not choosing to announce yet. It's all a gray area. It's all mystery at this point.
I was a little surprised to see Lena Solano not brought back in Washington. That's another one. Not overwhelmingly surprised, but just she was getting meaningful minutes in the playoffs and not returning. So it was just a mild surprise. I thought it was surprising to see Zoe Burns not back in Utah. The club said they were renegotiating with Hannah Bedford. They made no mention of negotiating with Zoe Burns. So I think with at least Zoe Burns, there's like a valuable player out there for someone to grab.
And that also could be that Burns was like, I'm not re-signing with you. The direction in which rejection occurred is murky. It could be that the team said no thank you, or it could have been Burns that said no thank you. We don't know yet.
Ziara King not re-signing with Seattle was a little surprising.
Seattle's release mentioned every possible free agent that they had and did not make any sort of indication that some players were definitely not re-signing or their contracts were not being renewed or they were in negotiations. That just feels like sloppy PR language to me. There's no way that Sierra King doesn't re-sign with Seattle. Her wife is a Seattle Reign player. It would be very strange if that happened, but I don't know.
But it was surprising to me that it hadn't already happened.
I mean, listen, these contracts can be very, very complicated.
Absolutely.
As Taylor Vincent talked about with us last week, there are so many moving parts that can't necessarily take a lack of announcement as any indication one way or the other about anything. It just could be that some fine print is still getting hammered out and they are not comfortable going public yet.
We're going to play a little game here. I'm going to name someone. You tell me whether they will be in an NWSL uniform next season.
In an NWSL uniform?
Yeah, just in the league.
Okay.
Next season.
All right.
If not, tell me what you think's happened. Becky Sauerbrunn.
I think yes. I think Portland signs her to a pillow deal that she'll use to pave the road for her retirement.
Okay. Lauren Barnes.
That's a tricky one.
She played almost 1,800 minutes for Seattle this year.
She played a lot.
Not a good 1,800 minutes.
She is, I think she's going to be 36 next year. She's a club legend, has been with the club since 2013. Do they, again, like Sauerbrunn, sign a short one-year deal and be like, you're probably coming off the bench, but we're going to roll out the red carpet in the way that we did for Megan Rapinoe, or maybe in a slightly smaller version? I'll lean yes. I think there's just too much loyalty there between her and Laura Harvey.
Megan Klingenberg.
No.
Yeah, I think she's retired.
Yeah, I think she's done. She really didn't play a lot last year.
No, she only recorded 340 minutes. They were not particularly effective.
What price is her as a locker room presence coming off the bench when you've got other needs to meet and maybe not a lot of salary cap space to do it?
Abby Erceg.
I mean, I'm going to say yes, but I'm only saying yes because I cannot imagine an NWSL without Abby Erceg. I agree with you that that was a genuinely surprising non-re-sign announcement because I don't know where she goes.
AD Franch.
Hate to say it, but well, yes, but it's going to have to be as a backup. She's going to have to sign a backup deal someplace. Or Angel City signs her. That's an Angela Hucles Mangano kind of move, would be to sign AD French.
If you exchange DD for AD, oof. I don't know what to tell you, man. Almut Schult.
No, but I'm only saying that because of the recent reporting that she was thinking about retiring even before the KC deal. So maybe she just wanted one last ride. So I think I'm going to say no.
Jasmine Spencer.
Yes, I think she catches on somewhere.
I was a little surprised to see her not returning to Angel City. My gut says, yeah, she'll catch on somewhere. Aneg Butel.
No. I think she's done.
Done or back to Europe?
Probably back to Europe. I think she'll find a French team to sign with.
Danielle Colaprico.
Yeah, she'll find a spot.
Quinn.
Yeah, I think she'll find a job.
I feel like she's been a big part of that Seattle team. Do you think Kelly Hubley's coming back somewhere?
I think Kelly Hubley has to sign somewhere.
I just don't know where. And let's close out with Marta. Do you think Marta's back in an NWSL uniform next year?
Yeah. I think she re-signs with Orlando. Now we get to the part of the offseason where things get really interesting because without a draft, now you really got to start looking at college players to potentially fill some roster spots. Louisville hosted a formal pro day, which is essentially like a one-team combine for a lot of local college talent in the area. Teams always invite local talent to train with the senior players just to get a sense of what's out there. But to my knowledge, this is the first formal quote-unquote pro day where you are specifically putting together a scouting combine for youth talent to essentially audition for a senior job. So how that will affect the free agency and the trade market will be interesting. Taylor Vincent, I think, is right. There's no pressure on teams to get anything done for a while now. So how many big moves are we really going to see in the immediate term?
That's exactly right. I think things will calm down a little bit.
The free agent pool is a lot thinner than it was last season. Think about all of the major free agents who are on the market. This year, it's Caroline, it's Marta, and it's Midge Purse. Whereas last year, that list was 4 times as long in terms of high-level, top-end free agent talent. So there will be less pressure to try and go create bidding wars for the top of the market.
Any other news and notes?
I don't think so. I think we're pretty caught up. We're going to do a little draft on Thursday for Patreon. We're going to do a change of scenery draft where we're going to talk about players who maybe could use a different team to aid in their development or bring the best out of them, both technically and tactically. So keep a listen out for that. And then for main feed, I think we're maybe going to try and talk about the best players of the year next week because The Guardian put out their list. ESPN put out their list a little while ago.
There are some ridiculous lists out there.
The FIFA Best long list is out. And then, yes, the FIFA Pro World 11 is quite wild. So it might be interesting to hash through how these things come to pass.
It's amazing, FIFA Pro. Mary Earps, really? Mary Earps?
Follow us, rate us, review us. Rate us 5 stars if you're going to rate us at all. Review us if you have the option on the pod app of your choice. Subscribe to our Patreon. We still have our holiday gift membership sale where you can buy a 1-year gift membership at 30% off. Their code is in the show notes for you to enter. And if you want to buy one for yourself, go right ahead. No one is going to stop you. Follow us on all social channels at XOwnGoals. That's the letter X Own Goals. And if you believe we've made an own goal, please email us at expectedowngoals@gmail.com. That's the letter expectedowngoals@gmail.com. Yeah, no, it makes sense.
What's up, Evan?
I'm sorry, but you got me hooked on Peel too. All my friends are throwing in answers to today's prompt of who would you most like to hear mic'd up? And one said Hal Hirschfeld because, like, duh, everybody wants to hang out with Hal Hirschfeld. This is what's so much fun about this game, that you can throw questions to each other and chop it up without all of the hassle of influencer posts, memes, and ads on other social media platforms.
So to everyone listening, download the link to Peel in the show notes and find all their exclusive WOSO prompts today.